Thank you. Good night. That was good. I felt that. I hope you did too.
That's me.
That's a great song. And
No?
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Another beautiful day in Florida. Extra rain for the plants for all the rain that we missed a week ago.
Zion for a foundation of stone. I lay in Zion for a foundation of stone. A tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation, a sure foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone. He that believeth shall live in peace. Wonderful Counselor, the everlasting Father. Wonderful Counselor, Almighty Prince of Peace. I lay in Zion for a foundation of stone. I lay in Zion for a foundation of stone. A tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation, a sure foundation. A tried stone, a precious cornerstone. He that believeth shall live in peace.
Hebrews.
Hey, your hands, El Gibor. Hey, your hands, Sar Shalom. I lay in Zion for a foundation of stone. I lay in Zion for a foundation of stone. A tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation, a sure foundation. A tried stone, a precious cornerstone. He that believeth shall live in peace.
All right. Is that too slow or is that fast? We changed speeds, but it was perfect because you made it perfect. Okay. All right, so this is a song that has two verses and they're exactly the same. So there it is.
Here we go. And it shall come to pass that before they call, I will surely answer them. And even while they're all yet speaking, I will hear their prayer. La 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 la
gave you a solo there. Too late to tune because I feel awkward in the middle. It's like what happened in the beginning. We're playing out of tune before. A little. Perfect.
Lord is present in the sanctuary. Let us praise the Lord.
Wait, I'm singing a different song to this melody, right?
Yeah.
There it is. Okay.
30 years
I'm
later.
tired.
The Lord is present in the sanctuary. Let us praise the Lord.
There it is.
The Lord is present and His people are gathered here. Let us praise the Lord. Praise Him, praise Him. Let us praise the Lord. Come, let's praise Him, praise Him. Let us praise Yeshua. The Lord is present in the sanctuary. Let us sing to the Lord. The Lord is present and His people are gathered here. Let us sing to the Lord. Sing to Him, sing to Him. Let us sing to the Lord. Come, let's sing to Him, sing to Him. Let us sing to Yeshua. The Lord is present in His sanctuary. Let us love the Lord. The Lord is present and His people are gathered here. Let us love the Lord. Love Him, love Him. Let us love the Lord. Come, let's love Him, love Him. Let us love Yeshua. The Lord is present in His sanctuary. Let us worship the Lord. The Lord is present and His people are gathered here. Let us worship the Lord. Worship Him, worship Him. Let us worship the Lord. Come, let's worship Him, worship Him. Let us worship Yeshua.
Okay. One more.
Praise awaits you in Zion, O God. Praise awaits you in Zion, O God. To you all our vows will all be fulfilled. Praise awaits you in Zion, O God. It is you, Lord, who hears our prayers. It is you, Lord, who listens to our cry. To you, everyone will direct all their ways. Praise awaits you in Zion, O God. Praise awaits you in Zion, O God. Praise awaits you in Zion, O God. To
Good evening, Shabbat Shalom. How are things?
Well.
Oh, that good, huh? Okay. Boy, are we enthusiastic?
I didn't know you were coming. Oh.
Well, let's just see what's in our Trix colored pages tonight. This reminds me of the Trix cereal, you know, with the Trix are for kids.
Oh,
Anyway.
tricks.
Oh, I said Trix. And I said Trix. You thought we were saying like tricks, like I'm going to trick you now.
Sounded like
We're
turkey.
talking about Trix, the cereal. No such luck. Yeah, the minute you see new colors, that means there's new announcements. So, I don't know if you have seen this, it requires actually 5 brain cells. Because there's a puzzle to be solved. And if your name ends in some letter of the alphabet, then you have to solve the puzzle. Okay, someone laughed, that's good. The way we've set up our, the ONEG schedule, and yes, there was a schedule, and yes, we did set it up back in a different century, literally, has been unchanged until this time. So please do not think that we never change anything, that we think the same old things work, because, hey, we're changing ONEG, and, you should know already that the Jewish community and food, never separate the Jewish community from their food, because it will not go well for you. And so this is a very extraordinary thing that we're doing, and since everyone's name and last name begins with some letter of the alphabet, you should find the letter that begins your last name and see what you are obligated to do for us. Just a reminder that our celebration at Oneg Shabbat and the food that is provided, it's a privilege, it's not a right. We could separate you from your food, but then you could go to one of many fine restaurants and get some food after the Shabbat services. But we would much rather have it be more of a home-like setting, and that everyone would take their turn and participate. Is that fair enough? Excellent. All right, turning to the next color of Trix here. Don't forget that the blue boxes in the back are for offerings that you may have, and a small reminder that this is the time of year, the middle of the summer, and don't ask me why, and don't ask me if we can change it, because I don't know any of those things. Here's what I know: we need flood insurance because look across the street. And it needs to be paid every July, which is like the worst month of the year, to try to pay things off as a congregation. And so that is coming up quickly. And so if you think it's important about the insurance, now's your time to act. And also keep praying, because heavy rain means that this area that the synagogue building is on is at like 1 foot of sea level, which means every time we get heavy rain several days in a row, then it has repercussions for our front lawn here. And so continue to pray. We're happy that God sends us rain, but sometimes we want to say, God, maybe not so much every day. Don't forget that we do post our services on video every week. We do not post the sharing and prayer parts of the videos on Vimeo every week. But we know several people who've mentioned us that live in other states that they have seen us present our extravaganza here every week, and it's actually sort of mind-boggling when you think about it. Also, we need greeters. So if you think possibly you could get here a few minutes early, and if you think possibly that no matter what strange face comes to the door, or strange clothing outfit, or strange, aura comes to the door, that you would be willing to say, good evening, Shabbat Shalom, welcome, and here's all our propaganda. If you could do those things, that'd be great, and we could use your help. And you should contract Sharon, who's, right? Hi, Sharon, how you doing? Sharon, contact Sharon. There's a couple others of us that you could talk to, but we'll just tell you the contact, sure. So did John say what we've been off doing? Did John say anything about,
Little
we
bit.
went on a trip, we left town?
That
He
Yeah.
saved it for me, isn't that special? We left in the middle of May, we spent a week in Lvov, which if you come from Lvov, they pronounce Lviv. It is in western Ukraine, which is about 600 miles away from Kiev, which is the capital. It's in the middle of a plain. It's not even on any major trade routes, so I'm not sure why, it's sort of a western Ukrainian type of capital city, but it's not a capital city. And it was run for many, many years under the Austro-Hungarian Empire, so a lot of the buildings downtown look like they're from 1880 and 1890s Vienna. So early Rococo, overdone, and they have a beautiful opera house, et cetera, et cetera. And it's different from Kiev, the capital city, which is over on the eastern side. We had a very interesting time there, where we were instructing Messianic leaders. There are Messianic Jewish congregations in Ukraine. They have leaders that have to be trained. A lot of the leaders don't have a large amount of training, but we were there to help them with that. And then we took a quick flight over to Munich, which is in southern Germany. And Munich is a very beautiful city. It was heavily bombed during World War II, as you might imagine. But the rebuilding of it, they rebuilt sections of it all in its authentic look. And there we were also, we were at a congregation in Munich, which is also a Russian-speaking congregation in Munich. And they're sort of straddling the line between all the young people are now speaking German and the older people are speaking Russian. So that was interesting. And then we were at a retreat center with about 50, 30 to 20 to 40-year-olds, something along that line. Young people. Young people. We were the oldest people there. That was cool. At a Christian retreat center, and very, very fun to be with that age group, and they're very excited about their lives. And of course, we got to instruct them about things too. What's nice is when John and I go into a group like that of younger people who they've heard of us. I think that's good. They heard of us. I don't think that means they heard we like robbed the bank. They heard that we were fairly smart and we have experience and have been in the movement for a while. Then they asked us all their hard questions, so that was very exciting. And some other time I'll tell you what they thought of people, what's happening in America today. That was also exciting and fun. Very strange news that makes it down to the younger generation in Germany. Yeah, that was interesting. We just go like this, yeah, no. No. How about, no, not really, no. No. We kept saying no, but they went. But we're just there to shock people, we know. It is a marvelous thing to know that all around the world and all the different kinds of congregations, people are now, tonight, stopping. Jewish people are stopping to celebrate Shabbat, to meet with their friends, to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he's still at work in all the different areas of the world, even areas that we in America might have thought there are no Jewish people there anymore. Oh, there are Jewish people there, and they do want to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And to me, that's some of the best news of all. That no matter what happens in world events, that God will continue in his plan for all the ages. Thanks for coming tonight. Shabbat Shalom.
As Dr. Patrice mentioned, all around the world, synagogues, Jewish families are celebrating Shabbat and are welcoming Shabbat, as it were, into their homes, as we now do, to welcome Shabbat into our synagogue, to And we do that as traditionally has been done by rising, facing the door as if we were literally welcoming Shabbat, because we are, and responding with L'chadodi. L'chadodi is a traditional way of welcoming Shabbat, reminding us that Shabbat is like a queen, like a bride, but also reminding ourselves that this Shabbat is a foretaste of the Shabbat to come, in the world to come, and therefore there are messianic implications and references throughout the Chadash. Join Jacob as he leads and we respond.
Chadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad, ishbianu el ha'minchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shelo tiferet v'litila. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Lekrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mechor habracha. Merosh mikedem nasucha, sof maaseh hamachshav vatchila. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Hi Torah ri, ki ba'urech kumi ori. Uri shir deberi, kivod Adonai alayich miglan. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela. Lechadodi likrat kala, anei Shabbat mekavela.
Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Observe and remember in a single statement the unique God caused us to hear his command. He alone is Lord, and his name is unique to his fame and splendor and praise. Together,
Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath.
let's go to meet the Sabbath, for she is the source of blessing from the beginning, anointed from ancient days, though made last, conceived first. Come, my friend,
meet the bride.
let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Wake up, your light has come. Arise, shine, awake, awake. Sing a grand song. The glory of God is revealed to you.
Come,
Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath.
You may be seated. The verse just before the last verse that Jacob led us in talks about Jesse's son, the Bethlehemite. A couple verses later, there's a mention of the man, the son of Perez. In case these texts are somewhat unfamiliar to you and you weren't paying attention to the reading last week for Shavuot, because in Ruth, these are the texts that are mentioned because they're part of the Davidic line and therefore pictures of the Messiah to come. And when the Messiah comes, or as we understand it, returns, as we light the Shabbat lights tonight, we are reminded that it will be time of eternal Shabbat, the Messianic age.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotov, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has set us apart by your commandments, and commanded us to light the candles for the Sabbath. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotov, v'tzivanu lehiot or legoyim, v'natan lanu Yeshua Meshakenu ha'or la'olam. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctified us by your commandments, and commanded us to be a light for the nations, and gave us Yeshua our Messiah, the light of the world. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
As the second of the blessings reminded us, utilizing the words of the ancient prayers of the synagogue, our God has come and has redeemed his people. Those are the opening lines of our Tehillah Habrit Hadashah portion this evening, as we turn to that on pages 136 and 137. And we extend to our God our praise and our gratitude for what he has done and what he continues to do down through our history. The text begins, Baruch Adonai Elohei Yisrael, ki pakat et amo, vayishlach lo padut vayorem lanu keren, Yeshua, B'Beit David Ado. Together.
Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come and has redeemed his people. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he said through his holy prophets of long ago. Salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to show mercy to our fathers and to remember his holy covenant, the oath he swore to our father Abraham, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days.
The one who is the horn of salvation in the house of his servant David is the one who now sits on the throne in the heavenly realms. As we're reminded with Elohim Asher on pages 40 and 41, as he waits the time of his return, the time that we anticipate as well. Once again, we respond with Jacob on pages 40 and 41, Elohim Asher.
Elohim Asher Diber Mikadem Pe'amim Rabo Uvidrachim Rabo El Ha'avot Be'yad HaNevi'im Diber Aleinu Be'akarit Hayamim Ha'eleh Be'yad HaBein Asher Samlei Oresh Kol Uyado Yamasa Et HaOlamim
צלם עצמותו, ונושא כל בדברו, רב הגבורה, ולאחר שעשה, טיהור חצאים, ישב לימין,
In the past,
God spoke to our fathers through the prophets, and many times in various ways. But now, in the end of days, he has spoken to us by the Messiah, his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the full radiance of God's glory, and the flawless manifestation of his reality. He sustains all things by his powerful word. After he made atonements for sins, he sat down in the place of authority, beside the majesty in heaven, true and firm, established and lasting, right and faithful, loved and treasured, desired and pleasant, feared and mighty, ordered and acceptable, good and beautiful is this word to us forever and ever.
As he sits enthroned, so we down here on earth await his return. And so we pray in the words of the Amidah, the abridged section only, on pages 60 to 63. No, I'm sorry, abridged and summary sections on pages 60 to 63. In the abridged section, we ask that we get to see the lengthening of the light of the Messiah, that we get to see that return. And then we remind ourselves in the summary section that he is the God who is the shield of our ancestors. And as he has in fact looked out for our ancestors, so he continues to look out for us. And all of that should cause us to respond in gratitude, as we now do, as we stand, as we face Jerusalem, the direction of the Ohr, and utilize these words tonight, pages 60 to 63. And as we await the lengthening of the light of your Messiah, we say, Ohr Chadash Eloheinu, Elohe Avotenu, Elohe Avraham, Elohe Yitzhak, Elohe Yaakov, Va'el, Hagadol, Hagabor, Va'anor, El Elyon, and Shemayim Va'aretz. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, and God of our ancestors. You're the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. You are the great, the mighty, the revered God. You are the Most High God, who is master of heaven and of earth.
Magen Avot bidvaro, mechai metim v'ma'amaro, ha'el hakadosh she'en kamohu, המניח לעמו, ביום שבת קדשו, כי בעם רצה להניח להם, לפניו לבוא וירא באף אחד, ונודה לשמו בכל יום. שבת וברך שלי ומניח בקדושה לים ושני עובדי זכר למעשה בראשית
He with his word was a
shield to our forefathers. By his voice he will raise the dead, the holy God, like whom there is none, who gives rest to his people on his holy Sabbath day, because he delights in them to grant them rest. Before his presence we will serve him with fear and awe. Daily and constantly we will thank him with the appropriate praises. He is the God to whom thanksgiving is due, the Lord of peace, who hallows the Sabbath, blesses the seventh day, and in holiness gives rest to a people filled with delights in remembrance of the creation.
Our God and God of our ancestors, accept our rest. Hallow us by your commandments, and grant our portion in your tongue. Satisfy us with your goodness, gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you truthfully. And in your love and favor, O Lord our God, let us inherit your holy Sabbath. And may Israel, who sanctify your name, elevated as special, rest thereon. Baruch atah Adonai Kadesh. Blessed are you, O Lord. Be the one who makes Shabbat special. You may be seated. Because of the nature of the God in whose presence we find ourselves, yet again, as we said thus far several times, it's appropriate to praise him, to extend our gratitude to him. We do that in one of the traditional forms. And this evening, F-Patch, pages 47.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
ועם נברא חירותי והמליך מלכותי וחיי כל ויום וכל חיי כל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו
Amen. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולום מעולמיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם יתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמלך ונשאר בריחו לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה ותשבחתה ונחמתה להמירן בעלמה ואמרו
Amen.
Let his name be glorified and sanctified throughout the universe which he created according to his purpose. May he bring about the reign of his kingdom in your lifetime, in your days, and in the lifetime of all the house of Israel, speedily, soon. And let all say,
Amen. Let his great name be praised forever and ever, eternally.
Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, magnified and lauded be the name of the Holy One, blessed be he. Although he is far greater than all blessings, hymns, praises, and songs which are offered in the world. And all say,
Amen.
Amen.
He is far greater than all blessings, hymns, praises, and songs which are offered in the world, which is why we raise that question, continuing in praise, Mikamoka, who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders. Our response is found on pages 44 and 45. Jacob will lead us the first time through, and then we'll respond to him the second time through. To set the stage, the context, in the middle of pages 44 and 45, it says, praise our exalted God. Blessed is he who is to be blessed. Moses and the people of Israel sang this song too with great joy and a tremendous occasion, crossing of the sea. And so they all said, in amazement and wonder, as we now also say,
Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders?
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא.
and now we rise in response to answer the question with the response, Ein Kamoka, truly there is none like you, O Lord among the gods. Please rise, joining us on pages, or joining Jacob in the right part of the response on pages 88 and 89.
אין כמוך באלים אדוני, אין כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, עושה פלא. There is none like you among the gods, my Lord, and there is nothing that compares to your deeds. Your kingdom is a kingdom that endures for all eternity, and your sovereignty extends throughout all generations. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai meloch leolam va'ed. The Lord reigns, the Lord has reigned, the Lord shall reign throughout eternity. The Lord will bless his people with peace.
The Lord needs to also reign throughout our lives. That's what we affirm now as we respond to him on pages 34 to 39, facing Jerusalem yet again. We respond with the words of the Shema, which in effect we are saying, not just in effect, in actuality we are saying, Lord, I want you to rule over my life, permanently and fully. Pages 34 to 39.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, bechol levacha ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת עמם, בשירתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, וקשתך וקומך, וקשתם להיות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בעיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובשעריך. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. Blessed be he whose glorious kingdom is eternal. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your life and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates.
The reality we proclaim that we want in our lives will be the reality that will in fact reign throughout the earth, as Vahi Benso reminds us on pages 88 and 89, when the nations of the world will say, come, and let's go up to the mountain of the Lord and worship the God of Jacob. It's at that time, as the text says, from Zion shall go forth the Torah and the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem. Pages 88 and 89.
ויהי בנשוא אהרון ויאמר משה קום אדוני ויפוסו אוהביך וינוסו משנאיך מבניך
כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני בירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה, תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה, תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו.
And it came to pass, whenever the ark went forward, Moses would say, Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. May those who hate you flee from before you.
For from Zion shall go forth the Torah, and the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem. Blessed be he who in holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel.
Our text at the beginning, our words derive directly from the wilderness walk with God that we've begun reading about. And at the beginning of that walk, God in holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel. And now his people respond appropriately on page 133 as we do our part on on the way in our walk together with God.
The ark now unveils its treasure.
To our eyes and minds and hearts.
Inside, the scroll of Torah stands.
It stands there with all its richness and wisdom.
As we listen, voices speak, voices of our ancestors.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, and Moses.
O God, they bring us your instructions for us.
Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, and Miriam speak to us as well.
O God, they move us to respond to your promises to us.
We are grateful for your words, the words of Torah.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord calls.
We will hear your words that we may learn them, love them, live them.
What does the Lord require of you but to fear him, love him, serve him, and walk in all his ways?
All the Lord has said, we will do.
Mi Shebarach Avotenu Abraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov. He who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Matt. May he bless John. May he bless Dottie. And may he bless Celia. who have come up to honor God and the Torah. May the Holy One bless them and their families and send blessing and prosperity on all the work of their hands. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamporach.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Bless the Lord who is blessed.
Bless the Lord who is blessed forever and ever.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who chose us from all peoples and gave to us the Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
V'adaber Adonai al Moshe lemor, Nasso et rosh b'nei Gershon gam hem, levet avotam u'mishpachotam. You may be seated. And so the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, usual translation, count or make a census of the children of Gershon, as well, or they also, according to the houses, according to their family houses and their clans or their families. So according to their clans and families. The text literally says, raise up the heads of these people, continuing the same phraseology that began the text of the Midbar last week when we read it. Interesting, when we number people, we tend to diminish their status. When God numbers people, he wants to raise their status and let us know that everyone counts. And in this particular context, it's interesting to note that the text from last week concluded with the census of the Kohahites. And they're the ones who carried the ark and some of the major pieces of the Mishkan or Tabernacle. The Gershonites here carried some of the lesser portions. And it's almost as if God says to them as well as to us, it doesn't matter what your assignment is. If it may seem less than somebody else's assignment, nevertheless you count, and you count an awful lot. So it doesn't matter what your contribution is. God's making note, and it counts for an awful lot, each and every one of us.
Number 6, 22 to 27. Adonai said to Moses, speak to Aaron and his sons, and tell them that this is how you are to bless the people of Israel. You are to say to them, may Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face shine upon you and show you his favor. May Adonai lift up his face towards you and give you peace. In this way they are to put my name on the people of Israel, so that I will bless them.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chagei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and life everlasting planted in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
As we've already acknowledged, so we acknowledge yet again and affirm for ourselves now personally, he is the one who gave us the Torah. The words came directly from him, conveyed to us by Moses. The Zohar Torah reminds us of that on pages 98 and 99. Transliteration is page 95. And when they received it, as this last text reminded us, it was truly a blessing. A reminder that God was among his people. So his words are among us as well. We rise in recognition of that and we respond as our ancestors did. Zohar Torah.
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael api Adonai be'ad Moshe. This is the Torah
which Moses placed before the children of Israel. It is in accord with the Lord's commands by the hand of Moses.
You may be seated.
Good evening. I'm reading from Genesis. Thank you. I'm reading from Genesis 12, 1 through 7. Now Adonai said to Abram, "Get yourselves out of your country, away from your kinsmen, and away from your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you are to be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, but I will curse anyone who curses you. And by you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." So Abram went, as Adonai said to him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai, his brother's son Lot, and all their possessions which they had accumulated, as well as the people they had acquired in Haran. Then they set out to the land of Canaan, and entered the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place called Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. And the Canaanites were then in the land. Adonai appeared to Abram and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." So build an altar there to Adonai, who then appeared to him.
As you might imagine, when God spoke those words to Abraham, it impacted his life. When God speaks his words to us, it should impact our lives, taking deep root in our lives. That's why it's called Etzchayim. It's like a tree, taking root in our lives. And so our response should be, renew our days as of old. And that will be our response, as we now respond on pages 96 and 97 with Etzchayim.
Etzchayim ki levad chazekim ba v'tokeha me'usha v'racheha darkei noam v'chol nativoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai Chadash Yameinu, Chadash Yameinu, Ne'edem. Hashivenu Adonai Alecha, Ve'nashuva. Chadash Yameinu, Chadash Yameinu, Ne'edem. A tree of life it is to those who take hold of it, and happy are those who support it. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace.
Turn us, Lord, to you, and let us return. Renew our days as of old.
Making that our commitment, we are now better prepared to stand before our God, which we do, so please rise. Dalifne miaka ome, the text says above the ark. Know before whom it is that you stand. We stand now before him as our God, and we as his priests. And we respond with Uznucho Yomar, pages 98 and 99.
Uvnucho Yomar, Shuba, Adonai, Rivavot Alfei, Yisrael. When the ark rested, Moses would say, Return, O Lord, to the myriads of Israel's families.
Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and your mighty ark. Clothe your priests with righteousness. May those who have experienced your faithful love shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, don't delay the return of your son.
Va'avor David abdecha u'teshev penei meshikecha. Ki lechach tov natati lachem, Torati al ta'azovu. I give you good instruction. Do not forsake my Torah.
As we greet one another here on the Bima, we invite you to greet one another there in your sections of the sanctuary. Don't feel it necessary to cross the sanctuary over to the other side to make sure you greet everybody now. You can do that later.
No more people. It looks like a diamond.
It sure does.
I don't know, I thought it was making a paper airplane. And just trying to
Okay, enough with the greeting. Shabbat school has already disappeared. And I realized because of part of our greetings up here, I forgot to do something with you last week. Uh-oh, it's right. We'll find out in a minute. So I won't tell you who it was who said something up here that reminded me. And that is to review your Hebrew with you. Oh, yeah. So take out the bulletin and read along with me the opening line of the text tonight. You've got it with the vowels in front of you. I didn't up there, but that's okay. It reads the same. So follow along and feel free to join me if you would like. Vadaber, Adonai,
El Moshe
Lemor, Nasso, et Rosh, B'nai Gershon, Gad. Very good. Yes, I didn't make you to read the other part tonight. We can get you through 2 lines, that's cool. It keeps you, how should I put it? It keeps it fresh in your mind, so to speak. Now, as Dr. Patrice mentioned at the very beginning of our service, we had some wonderful opportunities when we were away from you. And I had the opportunity to, on Shabbat, to address the Messianic synagogue in Lvov, which is very close to where Patrice's grandmother was born. And what I shared with them then, I thought, hey, that's not too bad. So I shared it also with the young people, the 20s and 30s, in Germany to begin the conference. And then I thought, if this was good enough to be addressed to the people of Lvov and to the 20s and 30s, Messianic Jewish 20s and 30s in Germany, why shouldn't I share it with you as well?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you'll say that when I'm done too. But so anyhow, that's my plan. I thought I'd share it with you. One of the most formative moments in the history of Judaism, as you're well aware, came in that encounter between Moses and God in or at the burning bush, whichever preposition you want to use there. And during that conversation, Moses asked God what name he should use when people ask him who God is. And God replied somewhat enigmatically, or puzzlingly if you don't understand the previous word. in a phrase that occurs nowhere else in the whole of the Tanakh. Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh. Now, non-Jewish translations have read this to mean, among other things, I am who I am what I am that I am, and some render it, I am, that is who I am, or I am the one who is. Now, these are deeply significant, I'm going to suggest, mistranslations. Others say that the phrase means literally, I will be what I will be, or as they try to point out, or more fundamentally, that God's name, and by the way, please remember, when we deal with names in the ancient Near East, name implied not John, or Jacob, or Kerry, you'll get to. It implied who the person was, what characterized the person. So anyhow, what they say then is that God's name or God's character belongs, in a sense, to the future tense. However, let me suggest more accurately, understanding the classical Hebrew, the tense is actually the continual tense. Therefore, his call is to that which is now, but is also not yet, because it continues on into the future. And yet, if we look at that text that is referenced, Exodus 3:14, it's helpful to look at the context, as many of you are aware when you've gone to classes. The context, just peel back a couple verses. Chapter 3, verse 12, God says, I will go with you, and I will go with them. Interestingly, it's the same Hebrew word that's found in verse 12 as in verse 14. Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh. And that's the context for it as well. So the understanding is he is the God who goes with his people. Now, I was happy to share this with particularly the group in Germany, because this comes from a very important Jewish philosopher and scholar, Martin Buber, who happened to be from Germany. He understood the name of God very effectively there, as he put it, Ich bin hier, ich bin da. I am here, I am there. In other words, the God who's with us wherever we go. And in view of tonight's text, it's not just Ich bin da, it's Ich bin da lecha, as in Lech lecha, the text that this is taken from. In other words, this is for your good or for your benefit that he does this. The great Rabbi Rashi, 11th century, understanding the name correctly, said this, and I paraphrase it somewhat. He says, God is saying, I will go with you and with your children, even through the captivity, the dispersion. I will go with you. That's the understanding we need to have. And if we fail to understand this, we will miss, I'm going to suggest, the very thing that makes Judaism unique. Consider for a moment the structure of biblical narrative. Now, in literature, there are many kinds of narrative, but they all have one thing in common. Something that some literary theorists, does that work? Called the sense of an ending. Doesn't need to have a whole lot of theory behind that to figure out that one. The sense of an ending. In other words, they reach closure. Some narratives end with they all lived happily ever after. And frequently we call these fairy tales. Others end in defeat and death. We tend to call them tragedies. Now, there are other types, but they all have a beginning and an end. That's what makes them stories. Now, against that background, consider Genesis, Bereshit. The Jewish story actually begins with God's most important call to Abraham, the text that was read to you. It begins, Lech lecha, go for your own good. The call to Abraham to leave his people, his birthplace, his father's house, to travel to a land, God says, that I will show you. And again, it is, remember, Lech lecha. It's for your good and for your benefit. But against that background, we find that some 7 times God promises to Abraham that he will give him the land, and yet Abraham has to haggle, to bargain with the Hittites to buy just one small plot big enough to bury his wife Sarah. And then along comes his son Isaac. And what he wants to do is he wants to, I was going to say re-energize, re-engage, pick a term, the wells that Abraham had been involved in digging. So he digs out each of these wells one by one. And each time he digs out a well, the neighbors say, no, that's ours, that's our land. So he goes to the next one. No, that's ours, that's our land. And he goes on and on and on and on. And then after all this, Jacob and his family are forced into exile. So Genesis ends with the promise unfulfilled. The land, still not theirs. And yet, near the closing text of Genesis, Jacob's son Joseph reminds his brothers, when God will bring you to the land, make sure you bring me with you. In other words, take my bones with you. And then Exodus begins. And God calls Moses to lead the Israelites back to freedom and to the promised land, the land God promised. Now, it's as if we feel that the story is about to reach closure, but it does not come. Instead, a journey that should have taken days lasts 40 years. It's the journey we began reading about just last week. And yet God says through the prophet Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 2, as a young bride, you followed me through the wilderness. And he effectively identifies this walk with God through the wilderness as a 40-year honeymoon. However, in the final scene of Deuteronomy, at the very end of the Torah itself, we see Moses still on the far side of the Jordan. And he's granted only a distant vision of the land. Again, the natural ending is deferred. And yet the promise comes through in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 3 to, actually the whole paragraph, 3 to 8. God says, I will go with you into the land. I will give you rest. I will go with you. So take courage. Don't be afraid. I won't abandon you. And then he repeats that again. Be of good courage. I will never abandon you. A few chapters later, he reminds Moses, I will bring the people into the land I promised their ancestors. Only it won't be you. It's going to be Joshua. And what happens next? We have the book of Joshua to lead them into the land. In other words, there's still hope. However, even the Tanakh as a whole, ends in 2 Chronicles chapter 36. For those of you who've forgotten the Jewish order, the last book of the Old Testament, the Tanakh is 2 Chronicles. The last chapter is in fact chapter 36. And the whole of the Tanakh then ends with the Israelis in exile again, this time in Babylon. And we have Cyrus giving them permission to return. It's as if we are almost back to where we began, in the same region from which Abraham and his family first set out, that we read about. And yet 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 23 reads almost identically, word by word, to Ezra chapter 1 and verse 2, which occurs a few books earlier. And there, that's the beginning of the story of another Joshua. And a man by the name of Zerubbabel and Joshua, the co-leaders who brought the people back into the land. Now, I know of no other stories that have this same form, namely a beginning but no end. Because remember, the book ends with us out of the land. In fact, 2 Chronicles 36. In fact, we would not think of these kinds of things as stories at all if it were not that we do know the ending. It's been there since the very beginning. In other words, in God's three promises to Abraham that we read tonight. He promised, remember, he promised Abraham children, a land, and an influence on humanity, such that through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So yes, there is an ending. But it's as if it's always just beyond the visible horizon. The Jewish story ends, as Moses' life ended, with a glimpse of the land not yet reached. 2 Chronicles 36. A future not yet realized, but nevertheless fully promised. And in fact, as the book of Leviticus closes, as it closed just a couple weeks ago, God says, I will bring you back into the land. As the book of Deuteronomy will close sometime towards the end of the summer in Deuteronomy chapter 30, God says all these things will happen to you, but I will bring you back into the land. And then comes that radical promise that is the context for Vahi ben Soa, as I reminded you tonight. Then the nations of the world will say, come, let us go up to the house of Jacob to worship the God of Israel. The future not yet realized. Now the same is true of Jewish belief. Judaism is the only civilization whose golden age is in the future, the Messianic age, the Olam Haba, the world to come. The age of peace, when as Isaiah puts it and Micah does as well. Nation, the old song goes, will not lift up sword against nation, and they'll study war no more. And as Isaiah says, as elsewhere, at that time the knowledge of God will cover the earth. We have it repeated in our anticipation of during the Elena, which we will share in just a few moments. Then the world will be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty. And as the text goes on to say, then the Lord shall be Lord alone, his name unique among all others. And let me suggest that this ultimately was a major dividing line between Judaism and Christianity historically. Because to be a Jew is essentially to reply to the question, has the Messiah come? To reply with the words, not yet. And interestingly, that's underlined for us each Pesach, each Passover. When we take the Afikomen, please remember, as I shared with you before we took off for Ukraine and Germany, Afikomen is a word that means the coming one. So yes, he was the coming one, but he's the one who has come and is coming yet again. So we say, in that sense, not yet. One author put it this way: the Jewish narrative, and I quote, I like the way he said this, is the unappeased memory of a future still to be fulfilled. End quote. Sounds almost like a rabbi. This guy didn't happen to be a rabbi, but it sounds almost like the rabbi speak. The Jewish narrative is the unappeased, the unmet memory of a future still to be fulfilled. Why? What does this tell us about Judaism? At the heart of Judaism is a belief so fundamental to Western civilization that we often take it for granted, yet is anything but self-evident. And it has been challenged many times, rarely more so than today in our day and age. It's the belief in human freedom. That means, to a large extent, we are what we choose to be. Society is what we choose to make it. The future is, in that sense, open. There's nothing inevitable in the affairs of humankind. Except perhaps that we'll probably try to find a way to spoil it. But apart from that, we can impact it. Now, the ancients believed that human destiny lay in the stars or in blind fate, as the Greeks put it. 18th or 19th century, I forgot to double check, philosopher, I think 19th century, Spinoza, argued that our lives are governed by natural necessity. Another kind of philosopher in the early 20th century claimed that history, Marx said this, that history was determined by economic interests. Freud held that human behavior was shaped by unconscious drives. Nowadays, neo-Darwinists argue that we are governed by genetic codes hardwired into our brains. Freedom in all these theories is just an illusion. However, this very view is challenged in the opening chapters of the Bible. You see, for the first time in ancient human history, God is seen as before and beyond nature. In fact, he creates nature by a free, uncoerced act of will. And by creating human beings in his image, he bestowed something of that freedom on us. And perhaps this is part of what lies behind that interesting phrase, he breathed into them the breath of life. You see, alone among created life forms, we too are capable of being creative. Biblical narrative, then, is the ongoing drama of that human freedom and the hope that accompanies it. Now, unfortunately, the first four narratives in the book of Genesis are tragic. First, Adam and Eve, then Cain, abused their freedom. This is then repeated on a global scale by the generation of the flood, and then it's followed by the builders of Babel, or Babel, whichever pronunciation you use. You see, people far too frequently use their freedom to transgress boundaries and to deprive others of their freedom. So a new beginning becomes necessary, and God brings Noah on the scene first. And then he brings Abraham on the scene. And in fact, as we found out tonight, Abraham is told to leave all things, interestingly enough, all things that constrain freedom. Leave his land, his birthplace, his father's house. And he's called to begin a new kind of life in covenant with the God of the universe. Genesis is about that covenant as it affects individuals and families. And the God behind it all describes himself as El Shaddai, the God who's more than sufficient for all of our needs. The rest of the Tanakh then is about the covenant as it applies to the life of the nation. And then along comes another covenant, the covenant God made with David. The covenant about the one who is central to God's plan, not only for the nation, but for the world as well. And then comes the renewed covenant, which is in fact a covenant of renewal and ratification. And it reminds us that God continues to be active in our history. The Jewish story then is still unfinished. It's about a journey from multiple forms of slavery into what some have called difficult freedom. The Torah, therefore, is the template, the pattern of responsible or difficult freedom. It, in fact, is our constitution of liberty. It's what sets us free. Yeshua's brother reminded us of this. One translation of James 1:25 reads, it's the perfect law of liberty. The other one, just as effective and just as on target, the royal law of freedom. That's what it is, our Constitution of liberty, responsible freedom. Additionally, as Genesis implies, freedom is intimately related to language. And for more on this, talk to Dr. Patrice afterwards. God creates the world with words, and his first gift to humanity is the gift of speech. Look, we know that other life forms, primates, dolphins, even bees, have perhaps very rudimentary forms of language. But there is one form unique to human beings. And the Torah signals this by having God speak at the very beginning of the text. And he says, Yehi Ohr. Often translated, let there be light. No, he's saying, may this happen according to this word. Human beings are the only life form capable of using the future tense. In other words, of conceiving the future and having hope. Only beings who can imagine the world other than it is, only they are capable of freedom. And if we are free, the future is open, in some way dependent on us. We can know the beginning of our story, but not experience the end. And that is why, as he's about to take the Israelis from slavery to freedom, God tells Moses not what his name is, but what his character is all about. And he says, I will go with you throughout the whole journey. Judaism, the religion of freedom, is faith in and hope for the future. It is, as the prophet Isaiah reminded us, you will keep them in perfect peace, Isaiah 26. You will keep them in perfect peace, whose minds are stayed, fixed on you. And then comes the challenge, so trust in the Lord forever. In the text quoted by the rabbis of old, when they summarized the whole of the Torah, the whole of the Tanakh into one instruction, Habakkuk 2:4, the just shall live by faith. Faith in and hope for the future also understands then that God's name from the burning bush is, I am the God who will go with you as you live in this way. Now, Western civilization is largely the product of two cultures, ancient Greece and ancient Israel. The Greeks believed in fate. that the future is determined by the past. Jews believe in freedom, that there is no evil decree that cannot be averted, and we believe that the future can change the past. So the Greeks gave us the concept of tragedy, but Jews gave the world the idea of hope. The whole of Judaism, although it would take a whole book to show it, and in fact the book has been written to show it, the whole of Judaism is a set of guidelines and narratives designed to create in people, in families, in communities, and in a nation, to create in them habits that defeat despair, mitzvot that in fact bring and enhance life. Judaism is the voice of hope in the conversation of mankind. It is, as we will respond, as I said earlier in a few minutes, the anticipation, as the Elaine tells us, that the world will be perfected. But it is also that which generates within us the motivation to do our part, tikkun olam, to bring about repair in that world as we await that time. And so it's no accident that so many Jews are economists fighting poverty, or doctors fighting disease, or lawyers fighting injustice. In all cases, refusing to see these things as inevitable. It is no accident that after the Holocaust, Jews did not call it al-Nakba, the catastrophe, nursing resentment and revenge, but instead they turned to the future, building a nation whose national anthem is what? Hatikva, the hope. It's no accident that Judaism has been opposed by every empire that sought to deny people the freedom to be equal but different. It's no accident that Israel today is still the only free society in the Middle East. Now look, we understand fully that Judaism is a religion of details, but we miss the point if we do not sometimes just take a step back so we can see the larger picture. You see, to be a Jew, and those who've joined with us, is to be an agent of hope in a world that is serially and seriously threatened by despair. Every ritual, every mitzvah, every syllable of the Jewish story, every element of Jewish tradition is in fact a protest against escapism, resignation, or blind acceptance of fate. Judaism is, friends, a sustained struggle that we find ourselves in, perhaps the greatest ever known. It's a struggle against the world that is, in the name of the world that could be and should be, but is not yet. There's no more challenging vocation than this. And God gave it to us right at the very beginning as a nation. Before he gave us his words in Exodus 19, he said, you're to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, to convey this message to others. And in the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy, he reminded us that if we do in fact fulfill that vocation, others will look at us and say, wow. As some of you knew that was coming. What a wise and understanding people this is, that has a God so near to them, that hears and answers their prayer, and who has laws so wise as these. It is in fact the vocation that Yeshua renewed for us as his followers, the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. He called on us to be salt to the earth. For salt to have true effect, it needs to come in contact with that has been salted. Right? Salt on the table doesn't do any good unless it's salt on the food. He says we're to be lights. So, again, this is Matthew 5:13-16. So that people can see what we do and say, wow, isn't God great? That's what he means to glorify God in heaven. Throughout history, when human beings have sought hope, they've found in the Jewish story that hope. As the rabbi of old said in Romans chapter 4, verse 18, against all hope, Abraham in hope believed. He believed the promises we heard about tonight. Judaism is the religion, and Israel the home, and Jews the people of hope. And the key, the core, the resource for all this, well, let's come full circle. At the end of the Torah, there's Joshua. At the end of the whole of the Tanakh, there's Zerubbabel and Joshua. And so again for us, there is yet another Joshua, whose name we now pronounce Yeshua, who said, in words we reflected on just a few days ago as we celebrated Shavuot, that he's going to prepare a place for us, but he will come and take us to be with himself. And so we should have hope. He is the one who, in an event that took place 7 or 8 days before Shavuot, Yom HaAliyah, he literally ascended to the throne. But here's what he said before he ascended. He said, I have left behind for you power through the Spirit of God, who will energize you in this particular task. Oh, and interestingly enough, guess what the Haftarah is for next week? Zechariah, not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit, says. We've got the freedom to hope. By all means, take advantage of it. Take the next minute or so in quiet to make whatever commitment is necessary at this point for you to be more effective, not only in living and experiencing that, but expressing it to that. Judaism is the religion of the freedom, with the freedom to hope, is one that should provide enlightenment, hopefully that's happened, enrichment, hopefully that's happened too, but the opportunity for engagement, which is about to happen, and hopefully we've done that already. As we now stand facing Jerusalem yet again, and we respond with the Elaine as we anticipate that time. And the world will in fact be affected. When the story will come to a wonderful conclusion, the world will be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty. The engagement part is our calling is our task. If you're ready to take that on, feel free to bow. If you're not ready to take that on, probably not a good idea to bow in accepting that task. Pages 102 to 107.
עלינו לשבח אדון הכל, לתת קדימה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשינו פגעי הרצות, שלא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם קלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו כחמונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו וגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו עינוד, אל בית מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשוויותה, אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת עינו.
It is incumbent upon us to praise the Master of all, to exalt the Creator of the world, for He has made us distinct from the nations and unique among the families of the earth. Our destiny is not like theirs, our calling is our task.
We bow down and acknowledge before the King of Kings that there is none like him. For he stretched forth the heavens like a tent and established the earth. Truly there is none like our Lord and King. As the Torah says, you shall know this day and reflect in your heart that it is the Lord who is God in the heavens above, and on the earth beneath there is none else. We hope, O Lord our God, to soon behold your majestic glory, when all abominations shall be removed, and all false gods shall be eliminated. Then shall the words be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty, and all mankind shall call upon your name. For to you every knee must bow, and every tongue declare that you are God. Reign over us soon and forever. May the kingdom of David's greater Son be established forever. For then shall the words be fulfilled. The Lord shall be king forever, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day the Lord shall be one, and his name one. Ne'emar, V'haya Adonai, lemelech ha'aretz, Vayom hahu, Yihye Adonai echad, U'shemo echad.
You may be seated. I was going to say everybody but Gary, and Gary is not here. Oh, well.
He knew what was coming.
He knew